Okay, so as Bridget said, we have a slide deck, and you probably remember that she asked you to like the questions, so you'll see the section, the question, and how many thumbs up it got on the Slido. And as Bridget mentioned, I'm answering these questions on behalf of all of our colleagues just to save everybody bouncing around. So these have had input from the whole team. So the first question is, if a resident rehospitalized before 3 days of admission and comes back to the SNF before 3 nights, what is the look back for GG? And is the 3 days counted as skip days? So we made the assumption that this question relates to the provider having started but not yet completed the 5-day assessment. Regarding the functional assessment, the days that the facility has functional data, either before or after the interrupted stay, that adds up to 3 days of data, would be used to code GG. For example, if a resident was admitted on day 1 but left partly through day 2, was gone from the facility on day 3, and returned partly through day 4, you would use any functional assessment data from that first day, the half of day of day 2, the half of day of day 4, and day 5 for coding section GG. In terms of skip days, the midnight rule would be in effect, and providers should follow the policy as described in the RAI user's manual. Question 2. Yeah. No. Nope. Save them. The question was, are we able to answer questions in between? And let's go through these, and then we'll use any time for open mics, and we'll be around for a bit afterward as well before the next session. If a resident has an interrupted stay on day 3, and we have not scheduled and completed the 5-day PPS, can we complete it after the interrupted stay? And the answer is, since the window for scheduling the assessment are days 1 through 8, the facility would still be in compliance with the assessment scheduling rules. Therefore, the provider in this instance can complete the 5-day after the interrupted stay if they so choose. So you're still within that window. And next question is, in section GG, picking up an object, can that item be assessed for a resident seated in a wheelchair, or that it have to be in a standing position? Thanks much, and I know Ann says you're welcome. She's who answered this question. The resident needs to be in a standing position in order to code this item. Use the appropriate activity not attempted code if you're coding with a seated position, if the resident's not able to stand. A resident has been admitted to the hospital for pneumonia, where he has IV antibiotics. He's admitted to the SNF for rehab due to weakness and debility caused by the pneumonia, which was treated. Would we use pneumonia as the primary diagnosis for the SNF skilled stay? Would anybody like to guess what my answer to this question might be? Use your clinical judgment. If you can't decide, who do you go to? The provider. So the ICD code in I0020B is to reflect the code for the resident's primary medical condition, and that best describes the reason why they need that skilled care, the SNF Part A stay. Therefore, the provider would enter that diagnosis code and address that what resulted in their admission to the SNF. The next question, under PDPM, when a resident is readmitted after 3 days from the hospital, is the variable per diem payment started over? What do you think? Yeah, this scenario is not an interrupted stay, so the variable per diem schedule and the PPS assessment completion schedule, again, restart from day 1. Where can I find the slides online? This is an easy one. There is a link that is way too long to read to you. So I'm going to suggest that you choose your favorite search engine and search SNF QRP training. And I did that right before I got up here to make sure it would come to you. Bridget, do you want me to read the link? No. Okay. And on it, it's the page from which you registered. So if you're here, you were able to get to that slide. For the items that trigger the nursing component, such as sepsis, are there any restrictions on the actual ICD-10 codes accepted beside checking the item in section I? Will there be any definitions in the manual? The valid ICD-10 codes, which may be used to classify the patient into a PDPM clinical category, are available on the PDPM website. The next question. Resident is admitted on a Friday evening. The ARD has not been established on an MDS, and he's unexpectedly discharged on Sunday night. Since the patient is no longer in the facility on a Medicare Part A stay, a PPS assessment cannot be completed. Is this still applicable? The provider would follow the missed assessment policy, and that's in Chapter 6, Section 6.8 of the RAI User's Manual. The next question. Will there be any allowances for the BIMS or the PHQ-9 in Section GG coding for residents that admit late in September and have an IPA ARD set early in October to be able to utilize these responses from the prior 5-day assessment? There's no language in the manual that allows for reuse of these responses, therefore it is not permitted. Next question. How will PDPM affect long-term care Medicaid-only facilities? Questions about Medicaid go to your state agency. They'll be able to tell you whether this will have any impact. Next question. CMS allows 2 individual users per facility to obtain access, but isn't there a form that can be completed to add more than just 2? And the answer is providers can call the help desk and request a form and have greater than 2 users. The next question, did I hear that agency nursing or contracted nursing or therapy could not be counted as a helper when coding? For purposes of completing GG, a helper is defined as facility staff who are direct employees and facility contracted employees, such as rehab or nursing agency staff. It does not include individuals hired or compensated or not by individuals outside the facility's management and administration, such as hospice or nursing or CNA students that are not, employee. They have to be employees or within the agency. Therefore, when the helper assistance is required because the resident's performance is unsafe or poor quality, only consider facility staff when scoring the amount of assistance provided. So the short answer is, can you count agency staff? Yes, if your facility is paying them, you can count them. Next question. Besides a car simulator or a real car, is there any other way to do car transfer training? So this is for GG0170G, car transfer. Use of an indoor car can be used to simulate outdoor car transfers. These are half or full cars and would need to have similar features to that of a real car. That is, there'd be a car seat in a cabin of a car. In the situation where the patient's unable to perform a car transfer using a car or car simulator, then you would use the appropriate activity not attempted code. Next question. I thought the terminology for the 5-day assessment, I think they're saying changed. I thought the terminology was changed for the 5-day assessment to the initial. Is it being referenced as to a 5-day only? Please clarify. The name of the 5-day remains the 5-day PPS assessment. The reason why initial Medicare assessment was used in the rule is because it's a more generic phrase. The 5-day is the initial Medicare assessment. For example, if the name 5-day were to change in the future, whatever name of that assessment is would still be referred to as the initial Medicare assessment. All right, the next question. Please explain again the implications of dashes. It was told that if we enter dashes or skip into the MDS elements relevant to the SNF-QRP that we may not meet the reporting threshold for APU. As such, be subject to a 2% rate penalty. Should we really be entering dashes? So the SNF-QRP requires the SNFs to submit quality, measure, and standardized resident assessment data elements to CMS. For a given submission period, the MDS submitted by an SNF needs to meet the APU minimum submission threshold of no less than 80% of the MDS assessments, having 100% completion of the required SNF QRP data elements. These are the data elements needed to calculate the SNF QRP quality measures and are defined as standardized data elements. Successful completion is the submission of actual resident data as opposed to the non-information response options dash. Please note that while the coding of a dash is an optional response value for certain data elements, its use does not count toward meeting the APU minimum threshold requirement. And again, failure to meet that may result in a 2 percentage point reduction in the facility's APU. As CMS has said in the past and continues to today, that the use of dashes should be rare. Next question. Is there somewhere that has a listing of all the error numbers to know which, when you run them, what they mean? And that is Section 5 of the MDS 3.0 Provider User's Guide. So that's not the RAI User's Manual. It's the MDS 3.0 Provider User's Guide that's available on the QTSO website. This is, the next question is a drug regimen review question. I reviewed all of the X and noticed that they were all answered as 0 from admin, maybe admission. NT, which is equivalent to the number of stays that triggered the QM, 9 was coded. Why would it trigger if NA? Is this a non-acceptable answer? And the answer is we believe you're referring to the SNF QRP review and correct report for the drug regimen review SNF QRP QM. For the resident stay to be included in the numerator, the total number of Medicare Part A stays in the denominator must meet each of the two following. It needs to be that the facility has conducted the drug regimen review on admission, which resulted in one of the 3 following scenarios. No actual or potential or actual clinically significant medication errors were found. That would be indicated by N2001 equals 0. Or potential or actual clinically significant medication issues were found during the review, and that is N2001 equals 1. And then the physician or physician designee was contacted and prescribed and recommended actions were completed by midnight of the next calendar day, or the resident was not taking any medications. And then the second criteria is that appropriate follow-up occurred each time a potential or actual clinically significant medication issue was identified during the stay, or there were no clinically significant medication issues, or the resident was not taking meds. The stay will not be included in the numerator if the stay does not meet these criteria, and the review and correct report would then include an NT, meaning the individual was not included in the numerator. The stay will be included in the denominator. So for this measure, do we want them to trigger for this one? Yes, right? So we want triggered on this one. And then we have, for example, if N2001 is coded 1, yes, issues found during review, and N002 is coded no, indicating the provider did not contact a physician or their designee by midnight the next calendar day and complete the actions, and N2005 is coded no, all identified potential or actual clinically significant medication issues were not completed by midnight of the next day, then the stay would not be included in the numerator. Additionally, if a dash is entered for any of these 3 data elements, the resident will not be included in the numerator. So if you put a dash, then that's counted against you, right? You want them in that numerator. Residents reviewing resident records with NT, in other words, those not triggered, is encouraged to identify if any of those data elements were coded with a dash, as entering a dash may affect your facility's APU. So I think we hear that message kind of over and over in this, is a dash is not helping you in an APU. Even though the system will accept it, it's a problem. The SNF, again, where can you find the training? is the next question. And again, that is SNF-QRP training, and we will, when these questions are posted, certainly include that link. And the next question, if a resident is placed back on skilled care within 30 days after being discharged from Part A that is not an interrupted stay, will the variable payment schedule restart? Thank you. Yes, this is a new Part A stay, and you're welcome. The next question. When will the self-care and mobility changes scores show the risk-adjusted score on the review and correct? We expect that the risk-adjusted data will be available on the review and correct reports and quality measure reports this fall. The next question. There is no option for unknown for prior device use if family is unavailable and resident has dementia and is unable to answer. How should we code this? There are occasionally times we honestly don't know what the device is if the resident used prior to their hospital. And if you're unable to determine that the resident used any devices prior to the current exacerbation, illness, or injury, check none of the above. Okay? Next question. On 10-1, when we do our IPAs, will A24B still be the date Med A began? Yes. Next question. All GG examples in the RAI are conducted by the nurse. Is there any reason a therapist could not complete this assessment with an interview and other information from nursing care staff with resident and family interview? And the answer is CMS anticipates that an interdisciplinary team of qualified clinicians is involved in assessing the resident during the 3-day assessment period. Assess the resident's self-care performance based on direct observation, incorporating resident self-reports and reports from qualified clinicians, care staff, and family documented in the resident record during the 3-day assessment. And the next question. You said you can request up to 5 errors on the error report on slide 20 in the reports program. However, on slide 14 view, it looks like you only can select 1. To select more than 1 error, you press and hold the Control and/or Shift keys on your keyboard as you click to select multiple errors on that. And the next question, it's very frustrating to realize that the relatively new provider threshold report does not aid in determining our reporting compliance, which I thought was the point. Please, can we get a report that helps us ensure reporting compliance? So I will tell you that I've had this discussion with folks a lot during this training, so I want you to just kind of think about processes that go around with the MDS. If you received a report from CMS that said on the 31st of December you were compliant, what can you still do after the 31st of December on many of your assessments? Change the data, right? CMS is giving you this report. The SNF provider threshold report details the status of the measures required for the APU by the fiscal year. And the idea is that you use this report in conjunction with the other SNF, QRP, and CASPER reports to identify opportunities to correct assessments with missing data. It's important to note that those data elements that are designated as standardized patient assessment data elements, or SPADES, used to risk-adjusted QMs are used in the SNF QRP, and these are not included in the provider threshold. As such, you guys as providers need to proactively monitor compliance with submitting all required data elements through their quality assurance and performance improvement programs. So think about how you audit data maybe for payment items. My recommendation would be that you're auditing these data too. In those SPADE items, all of the data elements that are used in the SNF QRP are compiled in one nice document on the technical information page for the SNF QRP. So you can actually get that whole list and maybe use that to proactively assess your compliance from a data standpoint. All right, next question. J2100, can we count surgery in this scenario? Resident had surgery in prior hospital stay before Part A, was admitted to a different SNF for 7 days initially. Resident leaves at SNF and goes back to the hospital for pneumonia? That's a new one to me. I've been in this a long time. I've never seen that. Admits to our facility after a second hospital stay. So I think we thought that PNA was another surgery. So I think we're going to reserve answering this question. Maybe John will answer it when he comes up. You want to go ahead? Or you want to? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. We'll come back to this. The interim PPS assessments were, because of the 5-day assessment, which assessments are no longer necessary? The 14-day, the 30-day, the 60-day, the 90-day, the OMRA, the start of therapy, end of therapy, start and end of therapy, and the swing bed clinical change. But this is not because of the 5-day assessment. These assessments were removed because they're no longer needed under PDPM. Next question. What is the web address again for QTSO? It is https://qtso.cms.gov. Next question. We actually only have 2 minutes and 20 seconds left. The next question is data for SNF QMs always 2 years old or only the data used for compliance? The data used in the QM reports come from assessments with the target dates from the selected time period. For the CASPER QMs, the begin date and the end date are pre-filled with the most recent 6-month prior period for those measures to be calculated. You may enter alternative dates if you choose. For the SNF QRP QM reports, the default value is the end of the most recent calculated quarter. Again, you can select a different end date from the list. The begin date is a read-only file that's going to populate exactly 12 months prior to whatever end date you pick. That is all the questions that I have. Do you want to take a couple?
Sure. All right. So wait, I think it was like question 26. Do you want to go back to that one? All right, so I was right, cool. So J2100, so can we count surgery in this scenario? Resident, pardon me, so is admitted to different, right, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure I already answered this one. This is the question from earlier, right? Okay, so yeah, so we already talked about this one. All right, now you're good. Okay, so 52 seconds, 51. Other questions, come on.
Time for about one question.
Yeah, don't take him the mic though. I'm kidding. Yeah.
All righty.
I only have to run you out though for 28 more seconds. So.
Hi, John. When will is there a timeline for release of the final grouper information?
I want to thank you for that question. That's an excellent question, 18. And I really appreciate you asking that, 15. No. So we don't have a date for that. And here's the basic story with that. And honestly, this is one of the first questions I thought I would get. And so it's the last question I'll get, which is good. So here's the basic story, is we put out the beta grouper, we put out the draft specifications, things like that. And then we asked for comments on, especially the beta grouper. And we got a lot of great feedback on it in terms of things that could have been improved, things that were either in error or issues that people had. And so we took all of that back. Our programmers are working through all of those various comments and trying to put out the final specs, because the difficulty is in trying to balance the amount of time we give for feedback from folks on the beta versus the amount of time that we close those off and then actually begin work and final processing on the final group that's put out. Figuring out where that balance point is not always the easiest thing, and quite frankly speaking, I think that the main focus that we have is ensuring that the grouper that we put out that would be available for folks to use as of October 1st, the free software that we put out there and the VOOT and everything else, that be as accurate as possible. That is, I will say flat out that is our absolute primary goal, is to ensure that one that anyone can use is accurate and that people can use it as of October 1st. Obviously, we also are sensitive to vendors who want to make sure that they can get their software tested and marketed in time. And so again, trying to balance those is rather difficult. Do we have a date for the final grouper? No. We are in I would say, the final steps of trying to get it out there. Again, there's a lot of clearances and things that need to get done in a lot of these cases, but we are trying to get it out there as soon as possible because we are trying to be as sensitive as possible to the vendors in doing their own testing. So not a great answer, I know, but the best I can do is that we are trying to get it out there as quickly as we can and as accurately as we can. So, and with that, thank you all very, very much for your questions.